Next disease. Periorbital cellulitis is very different from an orbital cellulitis. Periorbital cellulitis is in large part just a cellulitis of the skin around the eye. It is from Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, staph and strep and staph, like all other forms of cellulitis. Like all forms of cellulitis, cellulitis is a $5 word for an infection of the dermis and the epidermis. Because it's underneath the dermal-epidermal junction, the skin, as you see, will not weep or crust or ooze or drain. There's no drainage. There is no pussy material. There is nothing coming up because the infection is underneath the dermal-epidermal junction. Here is the epidermis. Underneath the epidermis is the dermis. And underneath the dermis is the subcutaneous tissues. Cellulitis is an infection of the dermis and the subcutaneous tissues. It is well underneath the dermal-epidermal junction. Impetigo causes infection of the epidermis, and since impetigo is very superficial, it lifts up the epidermis and causes weeping, crusting, and oozing and draining. In other words, infections in the skin that cause very superficial infections, like impetigo, is so superficial it causes weeping, crusty, oozy, and drainy. The new demonic Teletubbies, weepy, crusty, oozy, and drainy. And that's why you can use topical antibiotics. However, cellulitis, given that it's well under the dermal-epidermal junction, does not cause weepy, crusty, oozy, and drainy because it's too far underneath that dermal-epidermal junction. Therefore, since it is staph and strep, and which staph do we mean? Staph aureus, the bad actor. Which strep? Strep pyogenes. Strep pyogenes. Pus, pyogenic, genes, creating, genesis, creation, strep that creates pus, pyogenic, pyogenes. That staph and strep is treated with oxacillin, dicloxacillin, oxacillin, cloxacillin, dicloxacillin, and nampicillin. Oxacillin and cloxacillin, dicloxacillin, and nampicillin. Are you with me? Once more with feeling. Ox, clox, diclox, and naph. Ox, clox, diclox, and naph. When do you use methicillin? You use methicillin if somebody says, I would like to pee some eosinophils. Do you want to pee some eosinophils? Only if you want to give the person allergic interstitial nephritis. No methicillin. Causes allergic interstitial nephritis. Cellulitis of the orbit or anywhere else, oxacillin, cloxacillin, dicloxacillin, and nampicillin. The other alternative is the first-generation cephalosporin, cefazolin or cefazolin, depending on where you put the emphasis. And remember, if there's a penicillin rash, the amount of cross-reactivity between cefazolin and penicillins is well under 5%. If you have a rash, use the cephalosporin. If you have anaphylaxis, don't use cephalosporins. Use vancomycin or linezolid. Vancomycin or linezolid.